picture a winter night in Leyndell, the eternal city bathed in golden light from the great Erd tree above. Snow falls gently through streets where demigods walk as living legends, where death itself has been banished from the world. The capital sleeps peacefully under Queen Marika's divine protection, secure in the knowledge that immortality flows through their veins like liquid gold. But on this particular night, cloaked in wintry fog, that golden age would come to a violent, shocking end. The screams that pierced the winter darkness weren't just the death cries of a beloved prince. They were the first notes in a symphony of betrayal that would shatter the very foundations of the lands between. This was the Night of Black Knives, an event that would serve as the catalyst for the shattering itself, involving the assassination of Godwyn the Golden, Queen Marika's firstborn son. An impossible murder in a world where death had been sealed away. A conspiracy so intricate, so perfectly executed, that even now, as we piece together the fragments of that fateful night, the true orchestrator remained shrouded in shadow and speculation. Who really pulled the strings on that bitter winter evening? Was it the lunar princess Ranni who confesses openly to the crime? The eternal Queen Marika herself betraying her own golden child? Or does the truth lie somewhere in between, in a web of conspiracies where multiple architects use the same dark moment to achieve vastly different ends? Today, we're diving deep into one of Elden Ring's most pivotal mysteries, examining every piece of evidence, every contradiction, and every theory about who truly orchestrated the Night of Black Knives, the Golden Order's perfect world. To understand the magnitude of what happened that night, we must first understand the world that existed before it. The lands between under Queen Marika's rule represented the apex of divine civilization, a realm where the impossible had been made manifest. Godwyn the Golden's murder marked the first demigod death and shattered the previously invulnerable divine rule under Queen Marika. But before that shattering moment, the Golden Order stood as an unassailable monument to eternal perfection. Marika had removed Destined Death from the Elden Ring and gave it to her brother Malekith. This meant her children would be immortal, though there was still a cycle of death just under her watchful eyes. Imagine living in a world where death simply doesn't exist in any meaningful way. The Erd tree's roots spread throughout the land, recycling souls in an endless golden cycle. Warriors could fall in battle only to rise again. The elderly never truly aged into oblivion. Even the lowliest citizens of Leyndell walked with the confidence that comes from knowing mortality itself had been conquered. At the heart of this golden paradise stood Godwyn the Golden, perhaps the most beloved of all Marika's children. Godwyn was known for his valor during the war against the ancient dragons. As the son of Queen Marika and the first Elden Lord Godfrey, Godwyn represented a paragon of divine strength and virtue. Unlike his cursed brothers Morgott and Mohg, hidden away in the sewers beneath the capital, Godwyn embodied everything the Golden Order claimed to represent. He was nobility incarnate, strength tempered with compassion, divinity that walked among mortals with grace rather than tyranny. The story of his friendship with the dragon Fortisax speaks volumes about his character. During the great battle, Godwyn fought against the powerful ancient dragon Fortisax. Fighting to the end, Godwyn ultimately prevailed against his foe, earning himself the dragon's respect and friendship in the process. In any other age, this would have been a tale of conquest and subjugation. But Godwyn transformed ancient enemies into allies, bringing the dragons themselves into the fold of the Golden Order through respect rather than domination. The ancient dragon cult that arose from this friendship represented the kind of diplomatic miracle that only someone like Godwyn could achieve. The capital city of Leyndell itself stood as a testament to this golden age's glory. Multi-tiered districts cascaded down from the Erd tree's base, each level more magnificent than the last. The Dragon Temple incorporated architectural elements from both human and dragon design, a physical manifestation of Godwyn's peace. Noble houses competed not through warfare, but through art, philosophy, and devotion to the Golden Order. The Round Table holds finest knights gathered to share tales of valor over golden mead. This was civilization at its absolute peak, a world where even the concept of true ending had been erased. Yet beneath this golden veneer, forces moved in shadow. The eternal cities, banished underground for their transgressions against the greater will, nursed ancient grudges. The Carian royal family watched from their towers in Liurnia as their princess was marked as an Empyrean, a potential successor to Marika, whether she wished it or not. And perhaps most dangerously of all, some began to question whether immortality without true death was really the paradise it claimed to be. While immortality was initially seen as good, some wished to rebel against the greater will. Death's absence seemed to take away life's meaning, and they wanted freedom from the outer god's control. The impossible murder. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Maliketh, the Black Blade, and on a bitter night murdered Godwyn the Golden. These simple words describe an event that should have been impossible, a paradox wrapped in shadow and delivered at knife point. How do you kill a god in a world where death itself has been locked away? The answer came in the form of the Black Knife, assassins, and their cursed blades. The assassination itself was a masterwork of coordination and brutality. The assassins arrived in Leyndell, the royal capital, and slew Godwyn the Golden, carving the Cursemark of Death into his flesh. The imagery we see, fragmentary though it may be, shows multiple assassins restraining the Golden Prince while others deliver the killing blows. This wasn't a coward strike from the shadows, but a coordinated assault that required overwhelming force even against a single target. The Black Knife assassins are an interesting group. They come from the Eternal City, though it is not clear exactly who contracted them. They were all Numen and all women. These weren't mere hired killers, but elite warriors with deep connections to forces far older than the Golden Order. Their armor, crafted to muffle sound and bend light, spoke of techniques developed over centuries in the eternal darkness beneath the world. They belonged to the Numen race that has its roots outside, the lands between. Queen Marika, the Eternal, is also a Numen, suggesting a possible correlation. The weapons they wielded were perhaps even more remarkable than the assassins themselves. The assassins wielded cursed black knives, forged with a fragment of Destined Death. These knives were imbued with the forbidden power that had been locked away by Queen Marika. Each blade had undergone a fearsome ritual, transforming ordinary metal into something capable of severing the very soul from flesh. The craftsmanship required, the knowledge of death's true nature, the ability to shape a fragment of a sealed concept into physical form. All of this pointed to conspirators with intimate knowledge of the Golden Order's deepest secrets. But here's where the night becomes truly extraordinary in its horror. Godwyn wasn't the only one who died. The curse mark was supposed to form a circle. However, as Ranni perished in the same moment as Godwyn, the mark was split into two half-wheels. Two demigods perished at the same time, breaking the curse mark. The simultaneity of these deaths cannot be overstated in its importance. In a world where death had been absent for countless years, two demigods died at the exact same instant. Their deaths intertwined in a way that fractured the very Rune of Death itself. Godwyn's murder was unique in that it killed his soul rather than his body. This act killed the soul of Godwyn, but not his flesh. The killing of Godwyn brought Destined Death into the world. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in a tower in Liurnia, Ranni the witch's body fell lifeless while her spirit endured. One death in soul, one death in flesh, creating two half-wheels of a curse mark that should have been whole. The precision required for such an outcome defies coincidence. This was choreographed down to the second, a supernatural synchronization that speaks to planning of almost incomprehensible scope. The immediate aftermath was chaos incarnate. Tiche was one of the assassins who slew Godwyn. She was killed protecting her mother Alecto during their flight from the capital. The Black Knife assassins had to fight their way out of Leyndell, leaving some of their number dead in the streets. Many Black Knife assassins were killed, including Tiche. Alecto was captured and put into an Evergal while others were scattered. Guards scrambled to understand how their impregnable capital had been breached. Nobles cowered behind barred doors as word spread that the impossible had happened. A demigod had died. In the absence of a soul, Godwyn's body transformed into the Prince of Death. His Erd-tree burial contaminated the great tree roots with death-root, giving rise to those who live in death. The Golden Prince's corpse, denied true death, began a grotesque transformation. What had once been the most beautiful of Marika's children warped into something unspeakable. His burial at the roots of the Erd-tree, meant to be an honor, instead became a vector for spreading death throughout the lands between like a plague. Ranni's confession, the witch who claims responsibility. Ranni states, "Indeed, I am the witch Ranni. I stole a fragment of the Rune of Death and used it to forge the godslaying black knives through fearsome rite. I did it all. No hedging, no ambiguity, no deflection." When confronted about the Night of Black Knives, the Lunar Princess Ranni admits to everything with a casual certainty that's almost unsettling. She orchestrated the theft, forged the weapons, and set the assassination in motion. Case closed, mystery solved, or is it? Ranni's motivations for this heinous act were rooted in a fundamental rejection of her destiny. She was looking for a way to free herself from the control of the Two Fingers. Ranni sought to change her fate of being a pawn to the Two Fingers. As an Empyrean, she had been chosen as a potential vessel for the greater will, marked to potentially succeed Marika as the god of a new age. But unlike her mother, Ranni saw this honor for what it truly was, a cosmic prison, chains made of starlight and divine mandate. Like Marika, Ranni was granted her own shadow, blood. On the surface, this seems like a blessing, a loyal companion and protector for life. But shadows serve a dual purpose in the world of the greater will. Yes, they protect their Empyreans, but they also ensure compliance. Should an Empyrean ever truly rebel against their cosmic masters, their shadow would turn on them, compelled by forces beyond their control to eliminate the threat. Blade wasn't just Ranni's brother in arms, he was a sleeper agent, a sword of Damocles hanging over her head. The theft of the Death Rune fragment itself represents a feat of almost impossible daring. Maliketh, the Black Blade, Marika's own shadow, guarded, destined death with ferocity born of absolute devotion. Maliketh successfully defeated the Gloam-eyed Queen and bound the power of Destined Death into his blade. This was a being who had defeated a god-killer and claimed their power. Yet somehow, Ranni managed to steal a fragment from under his guard. The logistics alone boggle the mind. Did she act personally? Did she have inside help? The how remains frustratingly vague even as she admits to the what. Ranni awarded her brother Praetor Rykard with the Blasphemous Claw, a rock engraved with traces of the Rune of Death. Should the coming trespass transpire, it would allow Rykard to challenge Maliketh as a last resort. This detail reveals the depth of Ranni's conspiracy. She didn't act alone but pulled her own family into her web of betrayal. Rykard, who would later feed himself to a god-devouring serpent, was already walking the path of blasphemy. The Blasphemous Claw wasn't just a weapon, it was insurance, a contingency plan for when Maliketh inevitably came for vengeance. But here's where Ranni's confession becomes complicated. She never actually says she targeted Godwyn specifically. Wishing to shed her Empyrean body but preserve her spirit, she knew someone else's spirit had to die. Whether Ranni knew Godwyn would be targeted is unclear. Her plan required a soul death to balance her flesh. Death, but did she specifically mark Godwyn for assassination? Or did she simply hand the black knives to the assassins and let them choose their target? The timing was perfectly orchestrated so she could ascend to soul form. The precision required for this plan speaks to either incredible foresight or inside information. How did Ranni know exactly when the assassins would strike? How did she time her own ritual death to coincide perfectly with Godwyn's murder? The synchronization suggests either supernatural prescience or coordination with someone who had intimate knowledge of the assassination timeline. The transformation that followed allowed Ranni to slip free of fate's chains, but at a terrible cost. Ranni transferred her soul into a doll modeled after her mentor. She cast away the body she was born into. Her new form, while freeing her from the Two Fingers' direct control, came with its own limitations. She became dependent on others to enact her will in the physical world, forced to work through agents and champions rather than acting directly. Ranni admits directly that she orchestrated the Night of Black Knives. She drops it first early in the quest, then later expands on why. Her openness about the crime seems almost suspicious in its brazenness. In a world built on secrets and lies, why does Ranni confess so readily? Is it pride in her accomplishment? Confidence that she's beyond retribution? Or perhaps a calculated revelation, admitting to one crime to hide involvement in something even greater? The Black Knives, assassins with impossible connections. The Black Knife. Assassins present one of the most troubling puzzles in unraveling the truth of that fateful night. According to the Black Knife armor set, they were all Numen. Marika is also accepted to be of Numen blood. It is also significant that all the Black Knives are women. These weren't random mercenaries or foreign agents, but women who shared direct ethnic and potentially familial connections with Queen Marika herself. The assassins were rumored to be Numen who had close ties with Marika herself. The word close here carries weight that cannot be ignored. In the rigid hierarchies of the Golden Order, closeness to the Queen Eternal wasn't something achieved casually. These women had access, trust, and positioning that would have taken generations to establish. Were they distant relatives, former handmaidens, members of a secret Numen sisterhood that predated Marika's ascension to godhood? The origins of the Numen people add another layer of mystery to their involvement. Numen are rumored to have originated from somewhere outside the lands between, likely meaning that they are aliens or celestial beings. If Marika and the Black Knife assassins all hailed from this same otherworldly source, their loyalty might transcend simple political allegiance. They could represent an ancient pact, a blood debt, or shared purpose that existed long before the Golden Order was even conceived. Their combat capabilities suggest decades, perhaps centuries of training. The armor they wore didn't just muffle sound, it bent light itself, creating a form of invisibility that even the most vigilant guards couldn't penetrate. A group entirely of women, arrayed in armor of silver under cloaks which fooled the eye. The creation of such equipment required not just skill, but access to techniques and materials that should have been restricted to the highest echelons of the Golden Order's military complex. They say the assassins who carried out the deed were scions of the Eternal City. This connection to the Eternal Cities, Nokron and Nokstella, complicates the narrative further. These underground civilizations had been banished by the Greater Will for the crime of creating artificial life and challenging the natural order. If the Black Knives truly originated from these buried kingdoms, their participation in Godwyn's assassination takes on the character of ancient vengeance finally claimed. But evidence suggests a more complex origin story for these enigmatic killers. They could have been a hybrid force, Numen women who had connections to both Marika's original people and the Eternal Cities. This would explain their diverse skill set, the otherworldly techniques of the Numen combined with the forbidden knowledge hoarded in the darkness beneath the world. It would also explain why they could operate in both spheres, trusted enough by the surface world to infiltrate Leyndell while maintaining connections to the underground resistance against the Greater Will. The fate of individual Black Knife assassins after the night provides crucial evidence about their true loyalties. Alecto, Black Knife ringleader, was captured and put into an Evergaol for her crimes, while the other assassins were sent to different parts of the lands between. The fact that Alecto was imprisoned rather than executed suggests either that she was too dangerous to kill or that someone with significant authority wanted her alive. An Evergaol is not a simple prison but a pocket dimension, a place where time and space fold in on themselves. You don't waste such resources on common criminals. Tiche was one of the assassins who imbued her Black Knife with the Rune of Death and slew Godwyn the Golden. Tiche's death protecting her mother Alecto during their escape speaks to loyalty and family bonds among the assassins. These weren't just co-conspirators but blood relatives, mothers and daughters bound together in their dark purpose. The personal stakes for these women went beyond simple assassination work. This was a family affair, literally and figuratively. The million-rune question remains: who commanded their loyalty on that night? If Ranni orchestrated everything as she claims, how did she secure the allegiance of women with such intimate ties to Queen Marika? The Luna Princess had resources and magical powers, certainly, but the Black Knives' connections to Marika suggest they wouldn't act against the Eternal Queen without either her consent or an extraordinarily compelling reason. One theory suggests the Black Knife assassins were double agents from the start, serving multiple masters simultaneously. They could have been Marika's insurance policy, a secret force she maintained outside the official power structure of the Golden Order. When the time came for the assassination, they might have been following Marika's orders, Ranni's orders, or perhaps pursuing their own agenda that happened to align with both. The post-assassination activities of the Black Knives add another wrinkle to their mysterious story. Rather than disappearing into history, they continued to operate throughout the lands between, but their targets became puzzling. They began hunting Ranni's allies, attempting to kill Blade, successfully murdering E.G., and generally working against the very person who supposedly orchestrated their greatest triumph. This behavior suggests either a fundamental betrayal, a contract fulfilled, an alliance ended, or that their true master was never Ranni at all. Queen Marika, the Mother's Shadow. The most disturbing theory about the Night of Black Knives suggests that Queen Marika herself orchestrated the murder of her own beloved son. On its surface, this seems absurd. What mother conspires to kill her child, especially one as celebrated as Godwyn? Yet when we examine the evidence, a pattern emerges that cannot be easily dismissed. Malekith's remembrance states, Malekith was a shadow-bound beast given to his Empyrean. Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away, destined to death. Even then, she betrayed him. This betrayal, referenced multiple times in the game's lore, occurred specifically around the Night of Black Knives. Malekith, who had faithfully guarded the Rune of Death for eons, was somehow circumvented or compromised. The language is unambiguous. Marika betrayed her most loyal servant. Marika betrayed Malekith and stole the fragment of the Rune of Death from him during the Night of the Black Knives. The texts indicate that Marika betrayed Malekith and plotted the night. The mechanism of this betrayal remains frustratingly vague, but the fact of it is repeated across multiple sources. Did she provide information about Malekith's weaknesses? Create a distraction at a crucial moment? Or did she personally steal the fragment and hand it to the conspirators? When Malekith speaks in his final moments, his words carry the weight of personal anguish. Marika, why wouldst thou gull me? To gull means to deceive or trick. Malekith doesn't ask why Marika betrayed the Golden Order or the Greater Will. He asks why she betrayed him personally. This was not just a political maneuver, but a deeply personal violation of trust that wounded Malekith perhaps more than any blade ever could. It was around this time, many believe, that Marika began putting a plan together to betray the Greater Will. If we accept that Marika had grown disillusioned with her role as the Greater Will's puppet, Godwyn's death takes on a different character. Rather than a tragedy that broke her spirit, it becomes a calculated sacrifice, a necessary step in a larger game. She had already removed the Rune of Death, questioning the Golden Order all along. This removal was part of her plan. The Black Knife assassins' connections to Marika cannot be overstated. These weren't just Numen women, but specifically individuals with close ties to the Queen. In the paranoid, hierarchical world of the Golden Order, Marika would have been surrounded by spies, guards, and magical protections. For the assassins to operate as they did required either spectacular incompetence on the part of Leyndell's security forces or inside assistance from the very highest level. The fact that Ranni works with other Numen women, who do not significantly reappear, suggests Marika had some connection to it. The absence of these assassins from Marika's retaliation is telling. After the murder of her beloved son, the queen who had crushed the fire giants and conquered the lands between, somehow couldn't find or punish a group of women with whom she shared ethnic heritage and personal connections. The math doesn't add up unless Marika didn't want them found. The timing of the shattering provides another piece of evidence. Following the Night of Black Knives, the Elden Ring was shattered by Queen Marika. The conventional narrative frames this as an act of grief-stricken madness, a mother driven to destroy the world by the loss of her child. But what if the shattering was always the plan? What if Godwyn's death was simply the trigger Marika needed to justify breaking the Elden Ring without immediately revealing her true rebellious intent? It would seem this was the crux of her plan. Marika knew she had all pieces on the board for one tarnished to return and end the greater will. She knew she would be punished for the shattering. This suggests a level of premeditation that transforms the entire narrative. Marika wasn't reacting to tragedy. She was executing a plan decades or centuries in the making. Consider the strategic brilliance of using Godwyn specifically as the sacrifice. As the most beloved and perfect of her children, his death would cause maximum psychological impact. It would justify extreme actions that might otherwise seem suspicious. Who would suspect a grieving mother of orchestrating her own son's murder? The very horror of the act became its perfect disguise. Some theorize Marika and Ranni set up the night together but had different goals. Marika ordered Godwyn's death as a first strike against the Golden Order, and Ranni used that death to keep her soul alive. This theory of parallel conspiracies explains many of the night's contradictions. Both women needed a death, both had access to necessary resources, and both benefited from the outcome, albeit in vastly different ways. But perhaps the most damning evidence comes from what Marika didn't do. This was a goddess who had crushed entire civilizations for threatening her rule. She had the power to stop time, to peer into the future, to command forces that could reshape reality itself. Yet on the night her son was murdered, all of that power seemingly vanished. No divine intervention, no protective miracles, no last-second rescue. Either Marika was genuinely caught off guard, which seems unlikely given her godlike awareness, or she chose not to act. The conspiracy of conspiracies. The truth about the Night of Black Knives may be that there is no single truth. Instead of one mastermind pulling all the strings, we may be looking at multiple conspiracies that intersected at a single, terrible moment. Each participant thought they were in control, but the intersection of their plots created an outcome none of them fully anticipated. For Ranni to have died at the same instant as Godwyn, either Marika or Ranni must have known about the other's plan. This is where things get muddy, as both have compelling motives. The simultaneity of the deaths cannot be explained by coincidence. Someone, somewhere, was coordinating these events with precision that bordered on prescient. But who was the conductor of this dark orchestra? Consider the possibility that Ranni and Marika were both aware of each other's plans, but weren't directly cooperating. Each might have recognized an opportunity in the other's conspiracy and adjusted their own plans accordingly. Ranni needed a soul death to balance her flesh death. Marika's plan to sacrifice Godwyn provided the perfect opportunity. Marika needed a triggering event to justify shattering the Elden Ring. Ranni's theft of the death rune and the resulting assassination gave her the perfect cover. The assassins were all Numen women which Marika brought to the lands between. Marika somehow betrayed Malekith related to the Rune of Death. The theory is she told Ranni where to find it or helped her attain it indirectly. This suggests a three-way conspiracy. Marika enabling the theft, Ranni orchestrating the assassination, and the Black Knives pursuing their own agenda within the framework provided by the other two. The Black Knife assassins themselves may have been playing an even deeper game. As scions of the Eternal City and Numen women with ties to Marika, they occupied a unique position at the intersection of multiple power structures. They could have been pursuing the agenda of the banished Nox civilization, seeking vengeance against the greater will that had condemned their cities to eternal darkness. Godwyn's death and the return of Destined Death would certainly serve those ends. One theory suggests the main target wasn't Godwyn, but Malekith himself, the only one capable of killing a god. Why target him? Because Marika was involved. Marika needed him to seal death so he couldn't interfere with what comes next. Under this interpretation, Godwyn becomes almost incidental, collateral damage in a larger war between Marika and the greater will. The prince's death was necessary to justify Malekith binding the Rune of Death within himself, effectively removing the shadow from the board. The post-assassination behavior of various parties supports this multi-conspiracy theory. The Black Knives' later attacks on Ranni's allies suggest their alliance with her was temporary and transactional. Maybe the Black Knives betrayed Ranni when they found out her fate was moving with the stars again and she was after setting up a new world order. Once Ranni's goals became clear, not just freedom from the greater will, but the establishment of an entirely new order, the assassins may have decided she was as much a threat as the Golden Order itself. Even the Two Fingers and the Greater Will might have had some awareness of the brewing conspiracy. The cosmic forces that govern the lands between aren't easily fooled. They might have allowed the assassination to proceed, knowing it would trigger a series of events that would ultimately strengthen their control. After all, the shattering led to the return of the Tarnished, and with them the potential for a new Elden Lord who might be more compliant than Marika had proven to be. The night caused Marika to initiate the shattering, which was actually all according to Ranni's plan. The shattering caused mass disarray, letting Ranni explore without being hunted. But was it really all according to Ranni's plan, or did she simply adapt brilliantly to circumstances? The witch's confidence in claiming responsibility might mask a more complex truth, that she was one player in a game with multiple grandmasters, each thinking they controlled the board. The transformation of death, the immediate aftermath of the Night of Black Knives, reshaped the very nature of death in the lands between. What had been sealed away for eons suddenly erupted back into the world, but in a form twisted and wrong. The killing of Godwyn brought Destined Death into the world. But this wasn't the clean, natural death that had existed before Marika's age. This was something broken, incomplete, cancerous. In the absence of a soul, Godwyn's body transformed into the Prince of Death. His Erdtree burial contaminated the great tree roots with Deathroot, giving rise to those who live in death. The Golden Prince's corpse, denied the release of true death, became patient zero for a new form of existence that defied both life and death. His body grew and mutated, spreading through the Erdtree's root system like a virus through a network. The Prince of Death has grown to immense size, developing a scaly fishtail and webbed forearms reminiscent of basilisks. Deathblight erupts from his body, drawing swarms of buzzing flies. His face has warped into a grotesque, fungal-like disc. This transformation speaks to death's fundamental corruption when improperly introduced to a world that had forgotten its nature. Godwyn became not just dead, but wrongly dead, a paradox of existence that spawned its own twisted ecology. Those who live in death arose from this corruption, beings caught between states, neither truly alive nor properly dead. Those who live in death use Deathroot to avoid being etched into the Erdtree, to be released from being recycled by it. Small cults popped up all over, causing the Golden Order to retaliate with new incantations. These weren't mindless undead, but souls seeking an alternative to the Golden Order's recycling of spirits. They represented a third option, horrible though it might be, between eternal servitude and oblivion. The spread of Deathroot through the lands between created pockets of death, touched corruption everywhere the Erdtree's roots reached, which was essentially everywhere. Catacombs filled with skeletons that reformed endlessly, mariners of the dead sailing ghostly boats through fog-shrouded ruins, and deathbirds descending from nowhere to spread ghost flame across the land. The very concept of death had been so long suppressed that its return took on nightmarish, uncontrolled forms. Seeking to free his friend from death, Fortisax entered Godwyn's death dream and tried to combat the death within, but was ultimately corrupted by the blight, becoming a lich dragon. Even the mighty ancient dragon, who had fought Godwyn as an equal and loved him as a brother, couldn't reverse what had been done. The corruption of death proved stronger than even draconic power, transforming Fortisax into a creature of living death, forever trapped in his friend's nightmare. The Golden Order's response to this crisis revealed its fundamental inability to adapt. After this event, the Greater Will and the Golden Order's hold on the lands between became weaker. Rather than accepting death's return and finding a way to integrate it, the Order doubled down on persecution and denial. Hunters like Dee and his brother dedicated themselves to destroying those who live in death, treating the symptom rather than addressing the cause. Meanwhile, individuals like Fia, the deathbed companion, saw opportunity in this new paradigm. Fia came into contact with the soulless body of Godwyn. She sought the two half-wheels to reunite them and produce a mending rune. She then solicits the assistance of the Tarnished in retrieving the other half of the Cursemark, which she uses to gestate a mending rune that can embed the principle of life and death into order. Fia's quest represents not just personal devotion, but a philosophical revolution. She sought to create a world where death existed alongside life, where those who live in death wouldn't be hunted as abominations, but accepted as part of a natural order that had been artificially suppressed for too long. The creation of the mending rune of the Death Prince required an act of profound sacrifice. Talk in secret, for I will soon lay with Godwyn, to conceive my child, the rune. This wasn't metaphorical language, but a literal description of a supernatural conception. Fia would use the combined halves of the Cursemark, the collected vigor of countless champions, and her own life force to birth something that could fundamentally alter the nature of the Elden Ring itself. Formed of the two Halbrand half-wheels combined, it will embed the principle of life within death into order. The Golden Order was created by confining Destined Death. Thus, this new order will be one of death restored. This wasn't just restoring death as it existed before Marika's age, it was creating something entirely new, a synthesis of life and death that acknowledged both as essential aspects of existence. The tragedy of Fia's sacrifice cannot be understated. She dies after a battle with the dragon, when she receives Godwyn's soul and creates a new rune using also old fragments and all her life energy, a powerful artifact, the creation of which no deathbed companion can survive. She knew from the beginning that her quest would end in her own death, yet she pursued it with unwavering determination. Her love for Godwyn and compassion for those who live in death drove her to the ultimate sacrifice. These brothers' vengeance upon Fia after she created the rune represents the Golden Order's inability to accept this new paradigm. Even in death, even after accomplishing her goal, Fia faced persecution from those who couldn't see beyond the black and white morality of the Golden Order. The cycle of violence continued even as she tried to break it. Weighing the evidence, who really orchestrated the night? After examining all the evidence, the testimonies, and the contradictions, we're left with a complex web of interconnected conspiracies that defies simple explanation. Let's weigh each theory against the facts we know to be true. Ranni's claim to sole responsibility has the advantage of her direct confession. Lunar Princess Ranni orchestrated the plot by stealing a fragment of the Rune of Death from Maliketh and imbued godslaying daggers with Destined Death. She had clear motive, escaping the Two Fingers' control, and demonstrable means, having successfully stolen from Maliketh and forged the godslaying weapons. Her plan's success speaks to careful preparation and execution. The timing of her ritual death to coincide perfectly with Godwyn's assassination shows either supernatural foresight or inside coordination. Yet problems persist with accepting Ranni as the sole architect. How did she secure the Black Knife Assassin's loyalty when they had such deep connections to Marika? Why would these elite Numen warriors, with ties to the Eternal Queen herself, follow the commands of the Carrion Princess? The assassin's later attacks on Ranni's own allies suggest either a fundamental betrayal or that they were never truly under her control. If Ranni orchestrated everything, why couldn't she prevent or predict their turning against her? The theory of Marika's involvement gains weight when we examine what she didn't do as much as what she did. A goddess of her power who had conquered the lands between and established an eternal empire, somehow failed to prevent or respond to her son's murder. The Black Knife Assassin's profile, Numen women with close ties to Marika, suggests they wouldn't act against her interests without her knowledge or consent. Maliketh's anguished question about why Marika would gull him points to a personal betrayal around the time of the theft. If Marika orchestrated Godwyn's death, it transforms the entire narrative of the Shattering. rather than a grief-stricken response to tragedy. The breaking of the Elden Ring becomes the culmination of a long-planned rebellion against the greater will. Godwyn's death provided the perfect emotional cover for an act that would otherwise seem like unprovoked betrayal of her divine mandate. The strategic brilliance of sacrificing her most beloved son to achieve freedom from cosmic tyranny has a cold logic that fits with Marika's demonstrated ruthlessness. The multi-conspiracy theory reconciles many contradictions but raises its own questions. If multiple parties were simultaneously using the Knight of Black Knives for their own ends, the level of coordination required seems almost impossible. Yet the precision of the event, 2 deaths at the exact same moment creating 2 half-wheels of a curse mark, suggests someone, somewhere, was orchestrating at least parts of the event with full knowledge of all moving pieces. Perhaps the most likely scenario involves Marika and Ranni both aware of each other's plans, using the same event for different purposes without directly coordinating. Marika could have enabled the theft of the Death Room fragment, knowing Ranni would use it while keeping her own involvement hidden. Ranni could have recognized an opportunity in Marika's rebellion and adjusted her own plans accordingly. The Black Knife assassins might have been following Marika's orders while allowing Ranni to believe she commanded them. The evidence suggests layers upon layers of deception. Every participant in that night's events likely believed they were in control, that their plan was the primary one. But the beautiful, terrible truth might be that no single person orchestrated the Knight of Black Knives. Instead, it was a perfect storm of intersecting conspiracies, each using the others to achieve their own ends, creating an outcome that none of them fully anticipated or controlled. The lasting mystery of who targeted Godwyn specifically remains unsolved. Was he chosen because his death would have maximum impact on Marika and justify the shattering? Was he simply the most convenient target for the assassination that Ranni's ritual required? Or was there something about Godwyn himself, his friendship with dragons, his perfect embodiment of the Golden Order, his potential to unite the lands between, that made him a threat to multiple parties? The night that changed everything. The Knight of Black Knives stands as the fulcrum upon which the entire history of the lands between pivots. Before that night, immortality, order, the crushing certainty of eternal golden rule. After chaos, war, the return of death in its most corrupted form, and the possibility, just the possibility, of true change. Every ending the Tarnished can achieve traces back to that winter evening. The default ending sees the restoration of the Golden Order, essentially attempting to undo the consequences of that night. Ranni's Age of Stars fulfills the promise of freedom her ritual death began. Fia's Age of Duskborn embraces the transformation Godwyn's corrupted death brought into being. Even the frenzied flame ending, burning away all distinction and difference, can be seen as a response to the chaos the assassination unleashed. The genius of From Software's storytelling lies in never providing a definitive answer about who truly orchestrated these events. Like real history's great conspiracies, the Knight of Black Knives resists simple explanation. Multiple participants, contradictory evidence, unreliable narrators, and the fog of time combine to create a mystery that players will debate for years to come. What we can say with certainty is that the night represented a fundamental break with the past. The Golden Order's illusion of perfection shattered along with Godwyn's soul. The comfortable lie of immortality gave way to the uncomfortable truth of death's necessity. And in that space between the old world's ending and the new world's birth, the Tarnished arise to decide what comes next. The transformation of Godwyn into the Prince of Death serves as a grotesque monument to the night's consequences. Neither truly alive nor properly dead, he embodies the wrongness that comes from denying death its proper place in the world. His spreading corruption through the Erd Tree's roots represents how suppressed truths eventually surface, often in the most destructive ways possible. Those who live in death, arising from Godwyn's blight, represent the excluded middle that the Golden Order couldn't accommodate. Neither blessed by the Erd Tree nor granted true death's release, they exist in a liminal space that challenges the binary thinking of the Golden Order. Their persecution by hunters like D revealed the Order's inability to adapt to new realities, preferring to destroy what doesn't fit rather than expand their understanding. The irony that Godwyn, the Golden Order's greatest champion, became the source of its greatest threat cannot be overlooked. His transformation from paragon to corruption suggests that the seeds of the Order's destruction were always present within its most perfect expression. Perhaps this was Marika's intended message, that even the most golden of suns could become a vector for death when the system itself was fundamentally flawed. Conclusion: the endless mystery. As we reach the end of our investigation into the Knight of Black Knives, we're left with more questions than answers, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. The assassination of Godwyn the Golden wasn't just a murder. It was a cosmic event that shattered the fundamental order of reality in the lands between. The fact that we cannot definitively say who orchestrated it speaks to the event's true complexity. Was it Ranni, the witch who openly confesses to the crime, seeking freedom from the Two Fingers' cosmic strings? Her confession seems almost too convenient, too clean for an event so messy in its consequences. Yet she had the means, the motive, and clearly benefited from the outcome. Her transformation into a doll body freed her from fate's constraints, allowing her to pursue an ending where the lands between could exist free from the greater will's influence. Was it Marika, the Eternal Queen, sacrificing her most beloved son in a calculated move against the greater will that controlled her? The evidence of her betrayal of Malekith, the Black Knife assassin's connections to her, and her subsequent shattering of the Elden Ring paint. A picture of a goddess planning rebellion on a scale beyond mortal comprehension. If true, it makes Godwyn not just a victim, but a martyr to his mother's greater cause. Or was it truly a conspiracy of conspiracies, where multiple architects used the same moment for different ends? This interpretation transforms the Knight of Black Knives from a singular plot into a kind of cosmic confluence, where the ambitions of gods, demigods, and assassins aligned just long enough to break the world. The beauty of Elden Ring's storytelling lies in this ambiguity. Like archaeologists piecing together fragments of ancient pottery, we can see the shape of what happened, but never the complete picture. Each player must decide for themselves who they believe was truly responsible, and that decision shapes how they interpret everything else in the game. What remains undeniable is the Knight's impact. The Golden Order never recovered from Godwyn's death. Marika shattered the Elden Ring. The lands between descended into chaos. Death returned to the world in corrupted, broken forms. And from this chaos arose the opportunity for change, for the Tarnished to return and reshape the world according to their own vision. The Knight of Black Knives teaches us that even in worlds where gods walk among mortals, where death itself can be sealed away, the desire for freedom and change cannot be suppressed forever. It will find a way, through conspiracy, through sacrifice, through acts of violence that echo through eternity. Godwyn's assassination wasn't just the murder of a demigod, it was the birthcry of a new age, painful and necessary in equal measure. In the end, perhaps the question isn't really who orchestrated the Knight of Black Knives. Perhaps the real question is what we, as Tarnished, choose to do with the fractured world that Knight created. Do we try to restore what was broken? Do we embrace the changes and push towards something entirely new? Or do we, like the conspirators of that fateful night, use the chaos to pursue our own hidden agendas? The Knight of Black Knives remains Elden Ring's greatest mystery, not because we lack information, but because we have too much. Every piece of evidence points in multiple directions. Every confession hides as much as it reveals. Every theory explains some things while leaving others in darkness. And in that darkness, in that uncertainty, lies the true horror and beauty of that winter night when death returned to the lands between. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Knight of Black Knives and the web of conspiracies surrounding Godwyn's assassination, please like and subscribe to Keans of Lore for more comprehensive explorations of gaming's most fascinating lore and stories. We'll continue unraveling the mysteries of the lands between and beyond, one careful investigation at a time. Until next time, fellow Tarnished, May you find your own truth in the fragments of history scattered throughout the lands between.